Making their commitment to not support any budget that does suspend Props 42 and or 1A. I think that's, getting a commitment is critical. We need to have the assurance that no budget will get their vote that does that to local governments. The people of the state of California voted for those two propositions to secure the funding and the financing of these programs for cities and counties, and to even consider suspending those at this time is wrong. And again, I thank them for their support for not doing that, and I would seek that commitment. But I'd like to see what my colleagues feel about sending that letter, but I think that's important. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
To the remainder of the board, Supervisor
on that,
Pinches?
I think there's a question there. You know, those propositions were voted for to go into transportation, and for the state to even take that money, even though they say the law says they'd have to pay it back in a period of time, but to take that and use that for any other, those dollars and use it for any other issue, I think is a violation of the proposition. You know, because when they divert that money, whether it's from Prop 42 or Prop 1A, and divert that and say use it for administrative or anything but transportation, I think that's a violation of of what the people voted for. I mean, you know, I could see how they could say, well, we're going to hold the money back. But what they're not talking about is holding that money back. They're actually talking about taking those dollars and and put it in a budget to fund other functions of government. So I think there's a real legal issue with them trying to take and use those dollars.
I'm not your counsel, and I haven't read the bills, but the word we're getting out from Sacramento, if there is a silver lining to this does happen, is the propositions limit the number of times that this raid can happen, and this would be one strike. But it is, from what I understand, is that this is allowed for under the proposition for a limited number of times, but the money has to be paid back with interest. So, you know, I agree with you, you know, in terms of the intent of the propositions 100%, but from what we're understanding from our representatives in Sacramento, that this was an eventuality that was considered under the propositions in the fine print, and it couldn't happen. So, but I didn't really, when somebody told me about the silver lining thing, I didn't really buy it.
And I'm not an attorney, but you understand my point. For instance, let's just take Prop 42. The voters said under Prop 42 that money has to be used, the gas and diesel has to be used for transportation issues. What they're talking about here is to divert, and under the law it says 2 years out of a period of 10 that they can withhold that payment. But under Prop 42 says that it has to be spent for transportation. Now they might hold that money, but what they're talking about by putting in the budget, in their budget plan, was to not pay that money out and actually use those dollars for other functions in the state system other than transportation. That's clearly a violation of Prop 42 on its face. So I think there's a real issue here if they move forward with that.
To counsel.
Yeah, I was just going to say that you really need to read the proposition and determine whether or not that's permissible. And I'm sure that there's probably, I mean, if they're doing it, there may be language in there that allows for
what you're saying is what you voted for in Prop 42 is, yeah, this is for transportation. But if the state decides to overspend their budget, we can take those dollars and use them for any place in the system. That's exactly what they're proposing to do. And I think it's a violation. And I think that's an issue that probably CSEC ought to be on top of and remind them that, you know, this is beyond this. This is unlawful what they're proposing to do.
Well, again, I'm saying you have to read the proposition. I'll be happy to look at it and let you know what it says.
The question before us, though, is let's back up a couple paragraphs. Supervisor Delbar has presented an idea of sending a letter to our legislators thanking them for their continued support, and the full context was...
Well, also to seek a commitment that they wouldn't support a budget that involved the suspension of 1A and 42.
Okay. In Prop 63, they're trying to raid also.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So the full context of these different funds that they're trying to raid, that's the gist of the comments by Supervisor Delbar. To the board, is there any problems with doing that?
No.
No.
Okay. So ordered by the chair and for drafting. Okay. And just to add on to Supervisor Pinches, if the wording is there in Prop 42 for direct and only spending on transportation and funds are being diverted without exceptions under the Prop 42 voting, it's very reminiscent to another situation where a proposition was voted on by the voters and the lawmakers amended it, and now that's in court for a decision. So I think it's right in line with what Johnny's saying, and we need to take a look at it, investigate it. So if council could take a look at that and maybe bring it back as an opinion, I'd appreciate it. Okay? Mr. Mitchell.
If you're done with the legislative, I had one other comment. Paul had furnished me a list of some activities by other agencies through our legislative consultant, and I saw 3 categories on there that I thought were interesting, and they were under the heading of Economic Development Initiatives. And the one that piqued my interest was the County of Santa Barbara. Senator Boxer has in a request for $850,000 for construction and renovation of the Lompokes Veterans Building. And that's always been an interest that I've had in renovating our veterans buildings because they do serve as focal points for our community. And Paul did some research and talked to the assistant CEO in Santa Barbara County, and this is their second year they've campaigned for it. They may or may not be successful, but apparently they think one of the keys to potentially getting this funded is to partner with your local cities. And the appropriation is for ADA compliance, roof repair, wiring improvements, and safety. So I'd just like to mention to the board that I'm going to be talking with our GSA director, and she's already done a lot of work on veterans buildings and a condition report. But I think it would be wise in next year's program that we look at that as one of our priorities. I think Point Arena would be a good candidate. Fort Bragg is a good candidate. I think there's a lot of work we could do with the veterans community halls and get letters of support for other agencies. But I thought that was interesting and not seeing that done, but it's actually under the category of economic development incentives. So something for us to look for next year. Just thought I'd let you know we're going to pursue that.
You bet. Very good. Well, let's move to CEO report then.
One other question on this legislative. You mentioned, Paul, the transportation issues. We tried to put a plug in there for the Brook Trail second access. Is that something that we've kind of got that in the hopper?
Paul Kaler again, Deputy CEO. We've had Redemeyer Road and Brook Trail second access on our list of federal priorities for